Hi, Dom.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. The weather's definitely helping. All this sunshine over the weekend has
Yeah, I've just had to shut my window. I've got a bird outside that is tweeting very annoyingly.
well, a bird is much better than someone building a new veranda.
Yes.
It's been saws and hammers for about a week now, so I'm hoping he's going to finish soon. Hey, how are you? How's lockdown been for you? How's this whole crazy thing?
It's for me personally, it's not that much different. Um, I was working from home for a year and a half before I got my office in St George's Works. I have an office set up here, quite a nice office set up. So I just work from home. It's fine. My kids and my wife, on the other hand, slightly different.
I was just going to say, I did think I was going to get that response from you because obviously we've talked in the past about you being really happy when you are left in front of a computer to your own
Yes,
devices with your headphones on, maybe some
yes.
gaming involved. But I was going to say, what is it like to have the rest of the clan with you 24/7?
So again, for me, it's not too much of a problem because I'm locked in this room and it's quiet. My wife is having to be mum and housewife and teacher to two children, and they're at different ages. So Rupert is 5, Willow's 8. So you're having to school two very different ages. So she's being a trooper, I think, is probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah, it's a challenge for everyone. I from what I gather, I can't really comment because I don't have kids
Yeah.
yet. So dodged a bullet there. Timed that right. But yeah, so just for anyone who hasn't had the pleasure of meeting you at one of our events or doesn't know anything about you, Dom, can you just give us a really quick overview of what it is you do with Tech Marionette and then just who you are?
Cool. So I'm Dom. Hi, everyone. I am currently CTO of a Chief Technology Officer, if you're not up on your acronyms, for a small software startup called Tech Marionette. So we are basically going into large organizations, think investment banks, places like that, getting a whole load of their data, linking it together, and then allowing them to effectively interrogate that data. So one of the projects we're currently working on is to do with a data center migration. And it's actually very hard to know what applications you've got, what users you've got, what machines you've got, and where they are and where they need to be. And we're able to answer questions like that. So that's my primary job. I have been a software developer all of my grown-up life. And I have been noodling with computers all of my life. So with my other hats, I'm also an IT consultant for some local companies, and I like getting kids into technology.
Yeah.
So that's my primary sort of goals. I do a lot of speaking on the speaking circuit, so I get a lot of. I recognise you, and it's like yes. So my face has got everywhere. Although I look a little bit different. I've got the COVID haircut. It was driving me nuts, so I bought some clippers and I let my daughter have a go, and then I had a go, and then my wife had to fix it.
Fantastic. Well, you just mentioned about your public speaking, and one of the main, well, I can't quite put my finger on when it was, but I've heard you speak many a times, and I think the one that struck me the most was actually at one of our events about a year ago now, called Hit Me Up, when you very kindly sort of shared your story, because you're very much, well, I don't know if you class yourself as that, but I would class yourself very much a mental health ambassador.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to say ambassador in terms of there are others out there doing a much better job than I am. But this is something that came from, I do some lectures at the UEA for computer science students. And one of the eye-opening things for me was they enjoy me getting things wrong. is, they like watching that, because all of a sudden they realise that, hang on, when we leave this degree, I'm not suddenly going to know everything. And it's kind of a great relief for them to see someone who is, quote unquote, a professional, being more like them. So it occurred to me that perhaps there are people out there who are suffering from similar mental health issues to me, and perhaps I could just stand up and go, well, it's fine, sort of.
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
I'm with you on that, because
yeah.
I know the word ambassador is a bit official and bullshitty, because, pardon, but I do actually think if we go to the sense of the meaning, that's what it is, and we can all be ambassadors. We don't have to be part of some big campaign or anything like that.
Yeah.
If we are all can be courageous enough to share our experiences and authentically, and not just all the nice stuff. The stuff where they, it's really was. I had a big rant on LinkedIn last week, because I felt everything was being like polished with like a marketing magic sponge, and I was just like, I'm sorry, it just doesn't work with mental health, because mental health is so messy and so like not a nice experience, that I just think I can't make it pretty.
You've got that, it's best described as sort of the snot coming out of the nose, snivelling, upset, depression, and there's no way of making that pretty. It's ugly. But it happens, and it happens to most of us as well at some point during our lives. You may not suffer from what's clinically classed as depression, but all of us go through periods where it is just crap. And this can come from anything. You can lose your job, you can lose a family member, anything like that, and you're in that horrid snot coming out of the nose, box of tissues, don't know where to turn in life. And some people much better in a couple of days, great, and others take a lot longer to get going. So a lot of what I sort of try and say is that, hey, we're out there, and we're fine, but also it's like you don't necessarily have to be a mental health sufferer. It's just like you can be human.
Yeah.
It's kind of allowed.
But you made a really good point there, and you sort of said it very slightly. It's like, oh, yeah, we're out here, we're okay. I actually want to see a real shift in more ownership. So I have post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a horrible thing to go through, but I'm a capable individual. I achieve great things. The fact that I have to go through hell and back now and again doesn't make me any less worth or any less capable than anybody else. Actually, I think it gives me an edge. I seriously think the slightly twisted mind helps me figure stuff out that others might not be open to. So I'm starting to get really enthusiastic about owning, mental health. And not just going, no, it's a weakness, but it's also a huge strength if you can get and use it, I think I said that the right way. Sorry, you see my brain sort of going as I'm talking.
It's something that my therapist said. Sounds very American when you say that. In totally the British sense of the word, I was broken, I needed fixing. But she was saying that one of my great strengths is I can just keep going. So you have all of this rubbish that's sort of grinding down on you. If you sort of turn around and look at it, it's like, well, yeah, maybe some other people wouldn't have continued going and would have just curled up into a ball. So as you say, it can be a strength.
Yeah.
Although I did have to hijack an entire conference when I first sort of outed myself. I basically stuck a track into a conference, a tech conference, hijacked it, put in a people track, hijacked the main hall, forgetting that other people were going to be doing talks. That was great. We had our opening speaker, two of them, who said they were expecting a small and intimate affair, not the large hall at the King's Centre with 300 people in front of them, so which I had to turn around and go, my ego apologises for this. And then you do have this ridiculous thing where you sort of, as I describe it, sort of out myself. And then I had to explicitly state that I don't want to be called courageous, because why is it courageous to turn around and say that I have this problem? I have gout. No one calls me courageous for saying, "Oh, you have gout." It's like,
Oh, Dom,
some
that's
days
brilliant.
I can't get to work some days because I can't walk.
Oh, you know what?
So
You should put that on a t-shirt. Honestly, that's brilliant. I mean, it's a conversation we have a lot in the cancer community as well.
cancer is one of the other things you battle. You don't suffer from cancer. You battle it. You don your uniform. You go in and.
Unfortunately, there's people that you don't always win. And I think
Yes.
this whole thing about battling and winning is like, well, you don't, I'm not going on to hand combat here. There's nothing
Yes.
I can do about it. All I can do is go with the ride and hope for the best.
Yeah. I mean, why not? All the other diseases you suffer from. So why can we not suffer from cancer, suffer from mental health? So there was that. The other thing I did was the sort of the double whammy, because you sort of out yourself as having depression, and I knew everyone was going to sort of, well, I say everyone, but there would be certain people in the audience go, oh well, of course we'd realised and we guessed. Like, yeah, well done. So at that point, I also came out with the fact that I do things like self-harming, which it's one of the few talks where I'm pleased I made people cry. I got to feel sorry for one of the women I worked with who wasn't expecting this talk to go the way it did. And I finished and went up and how was it? She went, it was great. But it was that kind of that hard whammy, because I also didn't want it to be belittled by people doing it. Oh, well, yeah, we kind of guessed. And it's like, no.
Yeah. So poor you. You'll be all right. Just stick with it. Anyhow, I need to go now.
Yes. My doctor summed it up when I finally went up and got put on medication, and he sort of explained the situation, and they do that head on the side and don't do that.
No, it's also the hand on the shoulder. I have an allergy to the hand on the shoulder. I get so wound up about it. Yeah. Well, moving on. With maybe mental health in mind, or maybe business in mind, however you want to answer it. The last 8 weeks, 9 weeks have been slightly weird. Would you agree?
No. So, yes and no. I am perfectly happy existing in effectively this room. A brief forays out. I'm very lucky in where I live. I'm in Cromer in North Norfolk, so I can go for walks along the beach. I can go for walks literally 2 minutes out the back is woodland. So in terms of sort of going out, it's fine. I have lived all over the world, and I'm very used to not seeing people for months on end, sometimes years. My wife doesn't get it. My brother and I won't speak to each other for 6 months. It's like, if there's a problem, you'll call. So I'm actually now seeing my family more because of the lockdown, because they've suddenly discovered video conferencing than I was beforehand. So for me, most of life is quite normal. It's
silver linings. I haven't thought of it in that way, but you're right. I'm more in touch with people further away now than any time before. What have you learnt from this extraordinary, unprecedented thing that's happened?
The word unprecedented gets used too much. I've seen it used 3 times in a single sentence in the news. It's just like, I say learnt, I knew this already, but people are idiots. We are beginning to see the ending of lockdown, regardless of what the government says. I live by the seaside, so we're now seeing people coming along who are not practicing any kind of. Well, my son, he's 5, he called it social Disney. He misheard, and I think that's a fantastic phrase, because it's kind of the pretense, the pantomime of dealing with the pandemic. I learned that you could barbecue from just wood that you find on your walks, because I went through a phase where I couldn't get barbecue coals. But there's plenty of wood that's fallen down outside our house, so I just bring stuff back and burn that. So we've had some barbecues. But yeah, I mean, it's not really been. My co-founder of Tech Marionette, he's in France, so we've been remote anyway.
It seems to me that you may have been ahead of the curve in comparison to many other organisations.
Yes, out of necessity, and also just we joke about the fact if I didn't have a wife and kids, I would probably end up at the supermarket in a few weeks' time going, "What lockdown?" Because I would have just been at home playing games. But yeah, we've been using technology to communicate for a long time. Video calls are nice and simple. Because Jason's based in France, it makes sense. We don't like talking over the phone. I don't know, phones I find harder. I don't know whether it's something to do with the audio, but I can't hear them as well. And then you lose a lot of the visual cues. So
I agree. I'm really good at bullshitting over the phone. If you ask me how are you, fine, yeah, everything good,
that's
everything good. But on a video call, like you can't really do that. You sort of.
So I have ended up in Zurich accidentally because of not paying attention on the phone call. My days when I used to work for UBS, who are a Swiss investment bank, and I was on a weekly call, which was boring, so I wasn't paying attention. You keep half an ear open, I'm on chat, typing away. And someone went, "Is that okay, Dom?" And I'm just like, "Yeah, whatever." And then straight on to chat with what have I just agreed to. Because they then said, "Well, if you want to drop off the call, go home and get your passport." And what I'd agreed to was to go to Zurich to do a training course. So I had to get the okay from my girlfriend, go home, pick up passport, pack everything, head off to the airport, fly. It's like, maybe find out what it is you're saying yes to before you.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. I don't know how much literature do you engage with, podcast wise, or books, audio books, or just
So
development?
I do a little bit of podcasting. More, I'm blaming Charlie for this one. So your video chat with Charlie, she mentioned No Such Thing as a Fish, the podcast.
Yes, I love that.
Which I have been binge listening. So it's very good to have on while I'm playing games because I don't have to look at anything and you can just sort of absorb the information. So I haven't gotten all the way back to the beginning because the podcast app I've got only goes back to 2017. But I think I've done 10 or 12 episodes.
Oh yeah, there's so much of it. Don't ever see it as an ambition to try and listen to it all because it's never ending. But
I will catch up. But I also I listen to something called the Unmade Podcast. I don't know if you've come across that.
What was it called? Unmade?
The Unmade Podcast.
The Unmade Podcast.
So,
I haven't. What is it about?
So that's Brady Harran, I think his name is, the prolific YouTube producer who does channels like Numberphile, which is a maths-based thing, Computerphile, which is a computer-based program, Objectivity, which is about books and historical objects and stuff. A whole slew of these very interesting channels if you're into that kind of geeky stuff. And he does this podcast with an Australian friend of his, where they discuss podcast ideas that will never get made.
Okay, I'm already all over that. I love that.
So the idea is this would be a cool idea for a podcast, but we're never going to make it. And they sort of split it up with one serious one and one jokey one. And they have actually gone off and made some of these podcasts. So the first one they did, it was a jokey one, but they came up with this idea of a podcast about a game called Tommy Ball. And the only thing you knew about Tommy Ball was that it was called Tommy Ball, and the presenters were going to make it up as they went along. And then you'd have to keep notes in order to make sure that you were actually being sort of self-referentially correct. But you've got no idea about how it's played, what the players do. And they did this whole episode where they had an ex-Tommy Ball great on there and just basically bullshitted this entire podcast about a sporting event that did not exist. It was really good.
I'll check that out.
Yeah.
I like the sound of that.
They did another one. Again, there's another one they made. It was a podcast called Wholesome, where so it's just the one episode. But the whole idea was this podcast was about wholesome things. It was in this world of sort of everything's going to crap and everything's throwaway and disposable. This is good, wholesome. So, Enid Blyton, glasses of milk. And there was one point where they were making honey on toast. And I was walking to work and I was hungry. And I had to divert via Tesco's and buy this large crusty loaf, some butter and some honey, so I could then go to the office and have these doorstep things. But yeah, they're a great pair who just get on very well. There's a very good natural rapport. And I find that good. I used to listen to 99% Invisible, but I went off that after they did one on drop curves, and I realised the whole thing is totally American-centric. Because they had this whole invention of the drop curve, and it's like, we've had them since the Victorian times in this country because we had people with prams. It's like, well done, America.
I've never been to America. Are you telling me they don't have dropped curves in America?
They do, but they've only been around since 1960 something or other.
No.
And there was this whole sort of protest, and it's like this. There was a disabled person who would go do guerrilla architecture where he would lay concrete ramps up to, because their curbs are also quite large.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sure I remember drop curves from a long time ago. They're not some new thing. And a lot of the infrastructure in this country is older than I am. So I went and did a quick look. And
I must admit, it's one of those things I never thought about, dropped curbs.
Yes.
Just never have. Hey, maybe there should be like an appreciation for the dropped curbs, because I've been taking them for granted.
Yes. So certainly in this country, they've been around for a long time. I assume that the rest of Europe has had them for a while as well, and possibly the rest of the world. Who knows? So at that point, I'm like, it's a bit too American-centric. So we'll drop that one. But I also come prepared with of course it goes backwards, my favourite book. So I have dispensed with pretty much all books. I read them on Kindle and stuff now, but Terry Pratchett, Neil Gaiman, Good Omens, my all-time favourite book of it's just superb. So I keep that one. And then a bunch of books that my co-founder has written, including one, sadly it's in the office, not with me, but one that I feature in. So his mum started writing a story when we were 11 with the idea that she would finish it when we were about 15, 16. So it's kind of teenager literature. Then sadly she died before she could finish it. Jason has since become an author and he finished the book.
Oh, wow.
So there is this book where we are the central figures. We are abducted into space by giant purple girls. And it's very much the kind of sci-fi you'd expect from like Astounding magazine, that kind of style. Very much aimed at the teen market. So if you're expecting something very highbrow and you're going to be disappointed, but as a kind of take it at that value, it's good fun. And of course I'm in it, so I love it.
What's the title?
I think it's Attack of the Giant Pink Girls. Let me go find out.
Because I'll put it in the description.
Cool.
Make sure that people can find it. Go and read about Dom's teenager.
Well, the interesting thing I found is that Attack of the Giant Purple Girls. There we go.
Awesome. I'll make sure to reference that.
So I'm the one who goes on about food. Now I am larger than Jason is, shall we say? But interestingly, in the book, when we were kids, he was the one that used to go on about always being hungry and always wanting. And it's just little references like that. You're like, oh, yeah, I remember.
Awesome.
Because he is my oldest friend. But having moved around the world, I don't have this thing where I know someone from primary school. So he's my oldest friend from the age of 8, and I don't have any other friends anywhere near that, or they're all sort of from when I was in my late teens, early 20s and onwards. So yes, it's just that one piece of shared. You're going to go, oh yeah, we used to do that.
That's great. And what a unique thing to have as well, like an account of your, childhood in a sense, but in a really creative way.
Yes. Amazing. It's good. I mean, Jason's become, I would say, a prolific author. He's pushed out quite a few books, and has some good claims to fame. So he wrote one called Pigs, Poultry and Poo, which is about how he moved from living in London to living in Hampshire doing up a barn. And when I say barn, I mean barn. There were chickens in it when he bought it. And having this small holding with sheep and cows and geese and stuff and alpacas. Something I would have never expected from him. And he turned around once and he said, "I am in the #1 best-selling list for books about poo."
Oh, fantastic. What a claim to fame.
The fact that list exists is worrying in all kinds of things. Yeah.
Right, awesome. Right, so this is the moment in
the jar.
The jar. Now, I had a very funny comment the other day saying that it looks like a jar of condoms, which it obviously isn't. But, right, it's starting. I'm going to have to fill it again soon. So, see.
Just drunk and buy some more.
If you could have dinner with any currently alive person in the world, who would it be with and why?
Ooh.
So there's two ways about this. You could pick someone for like inspirational reasons, or you could pick someone that you really want to have a word with and put things right.
Well, I mean, one of the first things that went through my head is, can I be armed? Because I mean that list would go on. So probably a bit of a niche answer, a bit kind of strange. But there's a gentleman by the name of David Braben, who, along with Ian Bell in 1984, wrote a game called Elite, which was a groundbreaking game back in the day. It was the first sort of open world game. So in some respects, it's kind of the forerunner to things like Minecraft. It pushed my home computer to its absolute limits. And you go back and play it now and you realize how much imagination you had to bring with you. He has subsequently rewritten Elite. Well, I say he has, his team have. He crowdfunded it. I threw my wallet at him when he announced that was going to happen. That game has cost me some, if you include the hardware, £1,000. My daughter is in the game. Her name's in there. And I have the map up on my wall. I have the hat on my bed over there and various other bits. And I would love to actually just have a sort of dinner with him and a chat with him, because Elite was one of those pivotal moments where I really got into computers. So there are two sort of key things that got me really hooked on computers. Another was to do with typing in programs and not being able to get it to work, and sort of working out how that happened. But prior to that was Elite getting me into sort of playing the games, seeing what these things can actually achieve and what they could do in terms of opening up an imagination for a small, as I was saying, 11-year-old boy. So it'd be interesting to have a chat with him just about what inspired him to write that, how his vision now, with the game redone, matches his original vision, what it is he would have liked to have been able, you know, if there were no technical constraints, what would he like to be able to do? And just a real nerdy chat about, you wrote this awesome game that kind of inspired me. Tell me more about it. So yeah,
I guess it would be interesting to know what it was like to develop it when he did as well, in terms of when technology was still in its early days, or game design and things like that, and came with massive constraints, and how he would have felt the process in terms of being frustrated that he may not be able to achieve certain things, but also baffled that they did achieve.
Yeah, I mean, there's some amazing stuff they managed to do, and when you look at the constraints, it really is all the more impressive. So I use Elite in my talks at schools, because it goes in nicely. You turn around and say, okay, 30-something years ago, there was this game, and I show them a video of me playing. And they sort of laugh because it's wireframe graphics and the sounds are really basic and the colors are basic, and you sort of point at a blob on the screen and go, that is a spaceship. And then you show them Elite Dangerous, and this is a gap of 30 years, and you've moved into something that's got the entire galaxy's modelled. So there's 400 million star systems. There are fully 3D rendered planets that you can land on, space stations that you can fly into. The whole thing is just worlds apart. And you go, right, that's 30 years. And then you go 3 years, and it's me sat in my chair playing this at my desk to me sitting in a VR headset playing this, and I'm actually looking around my spaceship. So we've gone down a factor of 10 and another big leap.
Yeah.
So I can't even say what's going to happen when you leave school, because, in 3 months, what's going to happen. And it helps them get to grips with just how much stuff has changed.
That makes me wonder, because, like, let's say non-tech people, the general population,
Yes,
have had to come on leaps and bounds over this extreme period in order to attain their normal function, things that they do every day. So we've all had to learn things and go outside of our comfort zone. And I think it's pretty clear that fast forwarding into the future, the digital space, the virtual space is just going to explode even more so than it already has now. So you describing that 30-year leap, then 2, and then another 1, and the acceleration in it is like amazing and incredible, and it also sort of blows my mind to even try and imagine what might be just around the corner.
Yes.
But I do think, what would be a really cool job to do? Someone's going to have to archive this and be a historian, because, in the same way as like there's history books or there's like historians about pretty much anything, there's going to have to be historians that are specialized in the digital age and how one thing came after the other.
Yep. So we already have stuff like that, and there's various different aspects. So you've got things like the Wayback Machine, which captures the web or portions of the web as it was at various points. So I remember the very early days of the web when we had the Mosaic browser. Websites by default had a grey background, not a white background. And I remember a project I was doing with a friend of mine for a sort of a search portal was reviewed in, I think it was Wired magazine. And they reviewed us very positively because, unlike Google, which was not the well-known name it is today, we had a white background. They only had a bog standard grey background. Now, obviously, Google did slightly better than we did, but you see those changes coming along, and you see how it's become. I remember watching the Martian landings on a dial-up modem, and you wait, and the pictures come down. And this weekend, I watched in high definition as 2 astronauts got off one spaceship onto the International Space Station.
Yeah, it's true.
And you look at the shuttle compared to what they were flying.
The suits. The suits are amazing. I mean, they look like designer suits.
Well, Elon did say that he wanted them to look good and be safe, and I'm like, I would probably have that the other way around. I prefer to be safe and then maybe look good.
Wow. The inner workings of Elon Musk is a whole.
But the 2 things that struck me with that whole mission. The first thing is the sequined dinosaur thing, which floated into view as they were preparing, and my kids were in hysterics about that. It just humanized the whole thing. But the other thing was, and this is very key to what we're seeing now with everyone having to interact with video calls. They tried to set up this thing called the Big Loop, where you have the International Space Station, the Crew Dragon, SpaceX, and NASA all effectively on the same conference call. So they're setting up a conference call. Now, this is rocket science. You have to remember that this is actually rocket science because we have rockets involved, and they didn't get it right. They needed to mess around with some of the microphones and get SpaceX onto a different channel and various other things. So if they can't get it right, what hope do we have?
Yeah.
So you need to just get used to that kind of, oh, your mic's on, you're muted,
It's just trial and error, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you're going to fail 10 times more than you succeed. You know, I've never done recordings, vlogs, public speaking before. I'm pretty sure there's a difference between episode 1 and now. Well, even
Yes.
actually, I recorded one on Sunday. I was mildly hungover. My hair was all over the bloody shop because I've just been painting a fence, and I was all puffed up from the sun, and you know, didn't think about anything, just jumped on. And I was like, well, maybe there should be a bit of learning going on here. Just review, learn, maybe get some boxes, put the laptop higher up, less
That
questions.
is actually one thing that has changed for me during this. So I have a set routine when I'm going into the office, and part of that is you sort of shave and leave the house. And because I haven't been leaving the house, I haven't been doing the shaving bit. So quite often you'll have a video call and I'll jump on and you'll get the preview video, and I'm like, I need to shave. And I have discovered that shaving into a web conference is actually quite hard because there's a delay. And the worst one is when you don't get the preview and you sort of join in the meeting and go, I should have shaved. So I made very, very sure before this. But I have also had to admit one, sorry I'm late, I was tidying my room. Because you have behind you.
Oh, I suddenly have got plants.
Yeah, no.
That was empty at the beginning and they're suddenly multiplying. And I've just purchased a picture that will go there at some point.
Cool.
So it's like, wait.
I'm very constrained in the layout of this room. It's actually a spare room as well as an office. So I've got a double bed that's sort of there. This cupboard behind me, which I try and remember to close the doors. On occasion, it will be, if I'm stood up at the moment, my desk goes up and down. If I'm sat down, you can see the floor. And I have been known to just throw things on the bed. So you have this zone of fine.
This zone's about half a metre.
Yeah.
So all that matters is that sort of half a metre by half a metre. You don't know this, but the rest of this room's an absolute bomb site.
So I could imagine. So I have actually before meetings admitted, you go, and there's this, the bed gets used as a dumping zone quite a lot. Because the other problem I have is the printer is shared at the moment, so the kids have got schoolwork and stuff, and that's all been printed. My wife will quite often come in and pick up stuff. My kids are doing things. Then they'll leave stuff on the bed because they've come in to show me something, and then they walk off forgetting it.
Yeah, that was one of the learning curves I've had with Nick. So Nick's taken over my office upstairs.
Right.
And the printer is up there, and now and again I'll just print something, wander upstairs, and I can see at his face like, get out. So he's obviously in the middle of a call, and behind him goes, we have I've got a really old school terrible printer because I hate buying new printers all the bloody time. So and it's really noisy, and I just every time he comes down I think, you want a cup of tea? Sorry.
Yes. So I have actually found that the way that these vlogs sound, it sounds like I'm on a video call. So it is quite useful sometimes just to put them on in the background, and I find out they're disturbed.
Yeah. I get what you mean, absolutely. But on that note, we have run over, which, to be honest with you, Dom, when I saw I've got you on my schedule today, I was overrunning, which is absolutely fine. It's been absolutely delight to chat
Thank you for having me.
Catch up with you, and I do hope, I know that you like your own four walls, but I do hope that in the near future I can coax you back out with the promise of a delicious cocktail and some lovely company.
I will be back out again. So I want to wait for things to get a little bit less insane than they are at the moment before I venture back in on public transport.
Yes.
But no, I will be back and around. So you're not getting rid of me that easily.
I didn't think I would, but just to reassure, we're not gonna have any events until we're probably way beyond the government guidance, because I'm just delaying everything by 2 weeks. If they say, oh, you can go and do that now, I'll start doing that.
Yeah, wait a little while.
Yeah, absolutely. Been a
Cool.
delight. You take care, sweetheart.
Love it. I'll see you later.
See ya.
Bye.